When I was 5 years old, I discovered that by squinting my eyes towards a light, I would see beams shoot out across the sky or ceiling, wherever the light was that I was looking at. I thought that it was my superpower. I remember talking to my dad about it and telling him of my discovery, and that the only problem was that I didn't know what it did. It wasn't heat vision or X-ray vision, or any other kind of vision I had ever heard of. It didn't magnetize anything, and it didn't make things move telekinetically, not like I had seen in movies. I told my dad that once I figured out the purpose of my superpower, which I was obviously already master of, then I would be a superhero, and he wouldn't have to worry anymore. It must have been 2 decades later, and I still hadn't figured out the purpose for my power. Not only that, but I learned about science and light spectrums, and that anyone who squints their eyes towards a light can see beams shoot out across the sky or ceiling. And none of those people know what effect their power has either. I went to a far-off land once. I stood on top of a mountain and looked over borders I could not see. Off in the distance were countries I had never seen and people I might never know. I am not a historian, but I had been told about how the borders had moved up, down, and over the mountain I was standing on. My blood is mixed, and my cultural identity is confused, to say the least, so envisioning the significance and right of these borders was a challenge. A few years before I was standing on the mountain, I had watched the president talk through the television. I had woken up that morning in a house in the woods with a radio telling me that terror had struck and that the nation was under attack. It seemed like every morning on the news there was a terror somewhere, and always a nation under attack. Still more asleep than awake, for all I knew the statement, "our nation," was just a quote from someone else in another country. I rolled over that morning and went back to sleep. Later, when I saw the confused paralysis on the faces of the people everywhere I went, I couldn't help but expect them to throw up their hands and yell. "Superman, can you hear me? Superman!" That's what I was thinking. At least once I realized what was going on. The morning I stood on top of the mountain, I could see far over the invisible border, and off in the distance I could hear a dull thud. And if I squinted my eyes, I could see smoke rise from the bomb that made the thud sound. There was no light for my eyes to make a beam shoot across the sky, but what good would that have done anyway? That was just my superpower, a power without purpose. 2 days later, I was walking down a street after surfing all day and drinking beer. I had come down from the mountain, as had many people in flight from their terror. Helicopters had been flying overhead every minute or so, and the beach was crowded with the evacuees, but what could we really do? We surfed and drank beer and thought about other things than war. It wasn't hard for me to do, since the closest thing to war I'd ever known was standing on a mountain, squinting my eyes into a dull thud that I only knew meant war. That afternoon, when I was walking down the street, I saw a magazine on the sidewalk. On the cover was a cartoon illustration of Superman sitting on a mountain overlooking the billowing of smoke and the carcasses of former homes. Superman, like a child with a useless superpower, was crying. And at that moment I realized that there would never be a hero, at least not one who could save us all. Sure, he could get a cat out of a tree or stop a speeding bullet, but at the end of the day, he was just one man, and no matter how much he wanted to use his powers, no matter how super he knew that he was, it's just too big for one Superman to stand a chance.